So here's something that some of you might find interesting. For those of you that don't live in cold climates, you probably don't experience this. But we're in a freeze-thaw cycle right now, and it won't last very long. The ground will be permanently frozen for the next several months. But it's thawing out for a few hours during the daytime. During this freeze-thaw cycle, the moisture gravitates up through the ground and comes to the surface. And then it freezes in the evening when it gets cold. And in places, especially on bare ground, we get these ice crystals forming. The ground puffs up. That ice that has, or that water that has gravitated to the surface freezes and creates crystals. And you can see right there how it's doing that. Here's ice that's turned to water. Today it's been relatively warm. It didn't get very cold last night. It barely got below freezing last night. And you can see this whole area right here is heaved ground, ice crystals. That is just a pain to walk through, drive through. Everything gets to be a muddy mess. And then about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the evening, everything freezes back up again. But in this freeze-thaw cycle that we're in right now, the daytime it melts some, and it becomes a royal pain in the butt. And when I can show you what I'm talking about. First of all, we haven't had any precipitation in days and days and days. So the ground should be relatively dry. But this precipitation, or this moisture that's in the ground that gravitates up to the surface, creates a muddy mess for a few hours during the day. We can usually get through the early morning hours up until about noontime without any issue, but once the sun hits this bare ground, then it starts to melt a little bit and the surface becomes muddy and very slick. In addition to that, if it's warm enough during the course of the day, let me see if I can film this. Those ice crystals that I was telling you about weaken, and when you walk on it, then it collapses. At this point, I would rather have snow, frozen ground. This freeze-thaw is just a pain, and it has no useful purpose in my book. And it'll stay with us until we get below freezing and stay there, or we get snow on the ground, something to change this cycle. But right now, this has been going on for a couple of weeks. Sometimes it's short-lived, sometimes it lingers. Regardless of the amount of time, it's just a pain. Where there's vegetation, like this grass, generally that doesn't happen. But overall, during the course of the winter, heaving is a real problem for us. The ground, the whole area can heave a couple of feet over the course of the winter as it freezes and that frost moves on further down. We've had frost as deep as 8 feet. Generally here, if you're going to keep pipes from freezing, you've got to bury them 10 feet deep. That's how cold the soil is.